Thank you, Paran, and thanks to Bioregional for hosting this essential event. This is a lot easier to get up on the stage as an American after the last election, I can tell you. And it's always a struggle to make the decision to fly internationally to talk about climate change. It's always a challenge for me personally. My personal footprint is 2 planets by being very careful, but really that's cheating because I'm not taking care of the account of my share of the country's shared services, for example. And it's also something where if I didn't fly, I would be a 1-planet personal footprint, but I'd still have almost 2 planets of shared services. That's the government's military and the roads and airports and so on that I need to take account of. So in America, we have a 5-planet challenge. And what I want to tell you about is a project in Sonoma County in north of San Francisco that we're undertaking that's in the One Planet Communities program. And to give you a bit of a picture, this is what it looks like today. It's a Hewlett-Packard campus originally, and became Agilent Technologies, and then we made the purchase. Our CEO, Brad Baker, had a vision of building a sustainable town, so having a compact development that was solar powered. And that evolution over time came to be a project where we started thinking about how do we go beyond that? How do we take a look at how do we take care of the way people come to and from work and all of those other elements? And so we engaged in the LEAD for Neighborhood Developments program, which is quite popular in the US, the LEAD program there. And it was at a conference that I went to 2 years ago now, and I stood up and I said how much we were reducing carbon by targeting LEED Platinum, the highest level of the LEED system, and all of the wonderful things we were planning to do, the bus to the train station and the farmer's market and all these various things. And Greg Searle from Bioregional in the back of the room, he said, so how much carbon are you emitting as a LEED Platinum project? And I didn't know, I hadn't done that math. So I went back and called him up later and told him, and we found out that we were nowhere close to where the IPCC had said we really need to be. And that kind of shocked me. It was my first real eyes open moment of saying if, and we then sorted out that if every building in the whole of the country of America were LEED Platinum, we wouldn't meet the climate goals that are set out for us already. We wouldn't even come close. And that was a little scary to think that the highest level, the highest standard that was being set out wasn't even close enough. And it wasn't just on climate. In California, we are a seasonal desert. We don't get rain for between 6 and 9 months out of the year. And so we have a water problem, and our water sustainability is quite an issue. This is a view from the air. The 4 large buildings that are there now, our plan is to create a town on top of that, to not tear down those buildings, but to reuse them, to repurpose those buildings, to build small blocks with narrow streets, something you've seen around here in London, but it's quite rare in the suburbs of America, I can assure you. And also built around a town square. So the town square in the middle of the chart is really at the very center of the community. It's 200 acres, 1,900 homes, about 4,400 jobs. And we have slightly more jobs on site than we plan working people in the community, in part to balance the fact that the neighboring communities have more homes than jobs. Backing up a bit, one of the principles we have is the idea of everything being around that town square, the farmer's market, and that everyone is within a 5-minute walk of this place. That it's a place where everybody needs to go for some reason every day. It has coffee, it has newspapers and restaurants, it has daycare, it has the One Planet Center, a place to visit and learn about sustainability. It has art, a movie theater, a hotel, all of the essential elements. This is not so novel for the EU. If you live in a town here, you may experience that pretty regularly, but it's quite shockingly different than the patterns we've developed since World War II in the United States, where the automobile basically separates us from everything. It's quite common that people drive 26 miles per day on average in our county, And it's fairly typical that people will drive more than half that, or about half that distance just to get to work. The commuting distances are quite far. We do have a train now near the site, and that's exciting, and it creates a new potential for us. But that's unusual. So Rohnert Park, the town this is in, is fairly typical for America and has very little transit opportunities. So one of our biggest challenges in the footprint is how do we bring our carbon emissions from transportation down a minimum of 83%. And just moving everybody in that town to San Francisco, downtown, where there's plenty of transit, but people still drive on the weekends to get out of town, would reduce it 45% maybe. We need to reduce 83%. So we need to rethink the whole process. I was asked to speak about financing a bit and about this project. And one of the things I wanted to mention is that there are certain targets. And energy efficiency and zero carbon infrastructure are two areas that we're really targeting. And the traditional methods of going after that are really looking at bonds and grants and really private financing. But what I want to talk about is this new idea of a secured loan. It's a new idea in our community anyway, that a secured loan, we passed a bill recently in California that allows private homeowners, private developers, and public entities to borrow money on a bond basis, a 20-year bond, to allow them to finance things that provide public benefit in the form of carbon reductions, but for private assets. That allows somebody to borrow money at bond rates over 20 years to install a solar array on their own home. That's interesting. That creates a new economic method, and in our part of the world, that's brand new. One way we're looking at using that is a traditional geo-exchange system might have a single building with a loop that goes into the ground. That water is circulated and provides a constant temperature for a heat pump to use. A different way to do this is to run those pipes laterally in the street and to use those pipes with multiple wells to serve multiple buildings. That's not too novel of an idea, but one thing that we're exploring is that loop can be charged with wastewater from the water treatment plant, and more interestingly, that the water department, the water agency, would actually own and operate that as a utility. What that allows us to do is provide heating, cooling, and hot water completely carbon neutral using only electric pumps. That is the only device in the entire system that does anything. And so solar power provides power to the electric pumps. That moves water through the system. The water goes into the homes and the businesses where a heat pump is there, and this could be bond financed. That takes the capital cost off of our project and attaches it to a monthly payment by the homeowner and by the business. An interesting idea of being able to achieve carbon neutrality without adding capital cost or purchase price cost. We can also irrigate off the same line. That's treated wastewater. That's perfect irrigation water for anything except an edible crop that has contact use. That means we can irrigate all decorative irrigation and all trees, including food trees. And we can do it off the same pipes, so we don't have to add any new pipes. When presenting this idea, the value proposition is different than an ordinary project. And this is one of the areas that as a consultant before coming to work for Codding Enterprises, I spent a lot of time helping people understand, which is the value proposition is different now. We need to start thinking about who the stakeholders are. The stakeholders are not just the developer in the city. We need to start thinking about the direct benefits, the local benefits, and the societal global benefits, and start explicitly stating that in our value propositions. By looking at funders that actually care about the environment and about social benefits and trying to attach ourselves to them and not going after traditional financing, it does reduce the pool of folks out there, but in this climate, people are starting to turn to more innovative ways, and we're starting to see some progress there. So when I think about this, Amory Lovins titled this The Tower of Babel. Everybody involved has a different view of what success means. And so what I wanted to point out, and this is very much a partial list, that everybody decides that there's a different value here, but each of these elements goes into the value proposition. As a developer, we don't want to raise home prices. As a contractor, they don't want callbacks. Each of those elements goes into that. So when setting out the performance and the ask and the borrowing conversation, those are the elements to include in the value proposition. I also wanted to talk briefly about creating jobs. That was the other element here, and very closely connected to financing, but slightly different. Our process was really first to do an assessment, to think about the fact that several thousand jobs were lost when the Agilent campus closed down where our project is, and to think about how we can return some of those jobs to the region in terms of high-paying technology jobs. And so what we really did is we started a few companies. And in the tradition of Bioregional, we found out what companies could serve the environmental, the social, the ecological niches, basically, of business. And one of them is the business cluster. And the Sonoma Mountain Business Cluster is an incubator for small businesses in sustainable resource technologies. It has, I don't have the very latest count, but I believe it's 26 or 27 startup firms that have started there. And they're in various technologies, from solar power to groups that do green marketing, to groups that help reduce inductive losses on lines and other areas, energy efficiency consulting. So all of these are technology firms that basically are filling some role there. The incubator is hosted on site, and it creates a nucleus for people to gather around. So we have a lot of meetings, a lot of people are drawn to it, universities are attracted to it. We've become a bit of a test bed for these technologies too. So as the companies roll out technologies, we're the guinea pig many times. It's interesting to note that incubators, on average across the country, it costs about $1,500 US to generate one new job. We're slightly higher because of our cost of living in Sonoma County at about $2,000 per job. That's a pretty good buy from an economic investment standpoint. So incubators would be something to think about as far as pulling out of the economic mess. Codding Steel Frame is a company we launched, and these are totally separate companies. The incubator is a nonprofit. Codding Steel Frame is a for-profit but separate company. And the idea behind this is to generate steel framing solutions for buildings, commercial and residential, that are made out of recycled steel in a solar-powered factory with no waste at all. And the goal is, and we're achieving all of those goals right now. The process involves cold forming steel in the factory from recycled coil and making studs into panelized systems, making the trusses and the floor joists and the wall panels. And what that allows us to do as well is eliminate all of the wood waste from a wood project, or even the metal waste from a project, and to also control the job site. So whereas before we might have taken several weeks to erect the frame of a home with maybe 5 to 10 people, we can now erect the frame of a home, a fairly large home, in 3 days with 3 people. And that's a whole different game, because it basically allows us also to constantly innovate. Because this is a highly computerized process, we can also change the designs of projects as they're being rolled out. It's a very just-in-time element. It's exciting for me too, because it allows us to completely reuse every element of the building when we're done with it. That we don't just need to recycle, we can actually build standard sizes, but we can also recycle this indefinitely into new buildings. So it has a very nice long-term perspective. Some views of the factory, the decoiler, the panelizing system. We've built a few projects from Genentech to a Whole Foods store, and are now working on our own project. With that, thank you.